Close your eyes and let yourself drift into a world where ordinary moments become extraordinary. Tonight we're stepping into a gentle tale that unfolds like a warm blanket on a cool evening. A story where love grows slowly, naturally, like morning sunlight creeping through bedroom curtains. This isn't about grand adventures or epic battles. This is about something far more precious, the quiet magic that happens when two souls recognize each other across a crowded room. Our story begins in New York City, where the autumn leaves dance through the air like nature's confetti. The city hums with its usual rhythm, but tonight we're focusing on something softer, something that whispers rather than shouts. We're about to witness the kind of love story that makes you believe in happy endings, the kind that reminds us why fairy tales never really go out of style. Picture Peter Parker, not as the web-slinging hero you might know, but as a young man with gentle eyes and a heart that beats just a little faster whenever she's near. He's the kind of person who holds doors open without thinking, who remembers the small details that matter, and who sees beauty in the ordinary moments that most people rush past. His world is about to change, not because of any superhuman abilities, but because of something far more powerful and mysterious, the simple, overwhelming force of falling in love. And then there's Mary Jane Watson, with her red hair catching the afternoon light like autumn fire. She moves through the world with a grace that seems almost musical, as if she's dancing to a song only she can hear. Her laugh is the kind that makes strangers turn their heads and smile without knowing why. She has dreams painted in watercolor hues, aspirations that shimmer with possibility, and a heart generous enough to see the good in everyone she meets. The coffee shop on 5th Street becomes our sanctuary tonight. It's the kind of place where time moves differently, where conversations stretch like honey, and the steam from your cup writes temporary poems in the air. The walls are painted in warm cream colors, and soft jazz plays just loud enough to fill the comfortable silences between words. Mismatched chairs surround wooden tables, worn smooth by countless conversations, and books line the shelves like old friends waiting to share their secrets. Peter sits in his usual corner, a photography textbook spread before him like a map to undiscovered territory. His camera rests beside his coffee cup, both tools of his trade as a freelance photographer for the college newspaper. The afternoon light filters through the large windows, casting everything in golden hues that make even the most ordinary moments look like paintings worth preserving. He's lost in studying the way shadows fall across the pages when the bell above the door chimes its gentle welcome. Mary Jane enters like a character stepping out of a beloved story. She pauses for just a moment, letting her eyes adjust to the softer light inside, and in that pause, the entire world seems to hold its breath. Her green coat is buttoned against the October chill, and she carries a worn leather bag that looks like it holds 1,000 stories waiting to be told. She approaches the counter with the kind of confidence that comes not from arrogance, but from someone who has learned to be comfortable in her own skin. Peter looks up from his textbook, and time performs one of those magical tricks it saves for moments like this. Everything slows down, becomes crystal clear, as if someone has adjusted the focus on life itself. He watches her order a chai latte with extra cinnamon, notices how she smiles at the barista, like she genuinely cares about his day, observes the way she tucks a strand of hair behind her ear while she waits. These small gestures become precious to him before he even knows her name. The coffee shop is busy today, filled with students cramming for midterms and office workers stealing moments of peace between meetings. Every table seems occupied except for one. The empty chair across from Peter becomes a stage for possibility, a space where fate might choose to write its next chapter. Mary Jane scans the room with those expressive eyes, and when her gaze lands on Peter's table, he feels something shift in the universe, something quiet but profound, like the first note of a song you've been waiting your whole life to hear. She approaches with the kind of grace that makes ordinary actions look like choreography. Her footsteps are soft against the hardwood floor, barely audible above the gentle murmur of conversations, in the whisper of pages turning. When she reaches his table, she tilts her head slightly, a gesture so natural and unassumed that it makes Peter's heart skip in the most wonderful way. Her voice, when she speaks, is like warm honey mixed with morning coffee. She asks if she might share the table, and Peter nods, perhaps a little too eagerly, then catches himself and smiles more naturally. He closes his textbook, not because he has to, but because something tells him this moment deserves his full attention. The simple act of her settling into the chair across from him feels like the beginning of something important, though neither of them could name what that something might be. Their first conversation begins the way the best conversations do, with a shared observation about something small and beautiful. Mary Jane notices his camera, mentions how the light in the coffee shop would make for lovely photographs. Peter finds himself talking about the way afternoon sunlight transforms ordinary spaces into something magical, how the right moment can turn a simple coffee shop into a work of art. She listens with the kind of attention that makes him feel heard, really heard, perhaps for the first time in a long while. They discover they're both students, both dreamers in their own ways. Peter talks about his passion for photography, how he loves capturing moments that might otherwise slip away unnoticed. Mary Jane shares her love of theater, describes how she finds magic in becoming someone else on stage, in telling stories that help people feel less alone. Their dreams are different, but they're painted with the same colors of hope and determination. The conversation flows like a gentle stream, meandering through topics both serious and silly. They talk about favorite books and least favorite foods, about childhood memories and future aspirations. Peter learns that Mary Jane volunteers at the local animal shelter on weekends, that she makes the best chocolate chip cookies in her apartment building, and that she once got lost in Central Park for 3 hours because she was too busy looking at the clouds to pay attention to where she was walking. Mary Jane discovers that Peter is the kind of person who remembers birthdays and sends thoughtful cards, who stops to pet every dog he encounters on the street, and who once spent an entire afternoon helping an elderly neighbor organize his photograph collection. These small revelations feel like gifts, each one adding another layer to their understanding of who the other person really is beneath the surface. The afternoon light begins to soften, painting everything in even warmer tones. Other customers come and go, but Peter and Mary Jane remain in their bubble of conversation, neither one wanting to break the spell that has settled around their table like a comfortable blanket. Their coffee cups sit empty now, but neither one suggests leaving. The coffee shop has become their world for these few precious hours, and the world outside can wait. Time becomes elastic in the way it does when you're exactly where you want to be, with exactly who you want to be there with. Minutes stretch into something more valuable than gold, and each shared laugh feels like a small celebration. They discover they both love rainy days, both believe in the power of handwritten letters, and both think that the best adventures are often the ones you never planned. As the sun begins its slow descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange that would make any artist weep with envy, Mary Jane glances toward the window. The gesture is casual, but something about it makes Peter's heart flutter with the sudden realization that this magical afternoon will eventually have to end. The thought feels almost too heavy to bear, this idea that they might have to return to being strangers after sharing something so unexpectedly wonderful. But then, Mary Jane turns back to him with a smile that chases away any worry about endings. She asks if he'd like to walk with her to the campus library, mentions that she needs to return some books before it closes. The invitation is simple, practical even, but it feels like the opening of a door to something beautiful. Peter agrees without hesitation, his heart lifting at the prospect of extending this perfect day just a little longer. They gather their belongings slowly, reluctant to break the intimate atmosphere they've created in their corner of the coffee shop. Peter shoulders his camera bag while Mary Jane adjusts her green coat, and together they step out into the cooling evening air. The transition from the warm coffee shop to the crisp October evening feels symbolic somehow, like they're crossing a threshold into something new and unknown, but undeniably right. The campus paths stretch before them like ribbons of possibility, lined with trees that have traded their summer green for autumn gold. Fallen leaves crunch softly beneath their feet, creating a gentle percussion that accompanies their leisurely pace. The air carries the crisp promise of winter, but for now, it simply wraps around them like a cool embrace, encouraging them to walk a little closer together than they might have with anyone else. Mary Jane points out small details as they walk. The way the lamplight creates perfect circles on the pathway, how the old brick buildings seem to glow in the fading daylight, the sound of distant laughter drifting from dormitory windows. Peter finds himself seeing the familiar campus through her eyes, noticing beauty in places he's walked past hundreds of times without really observing. Her perspective transforms the ordinary into something enchanting, and he realizes this might be one of her many gifts. They pass the fountain in the center of campus, where coins glint beneath the surface like fallen stars. Students have tossed them there, with wishes whispered to the universe, hopes for good grades and true love, and futures bright with promise. Mary Jane pauses here, pulling a penny from her pocket with a mischievous smile. She closes her eyes, makes a silent wish, and tosses the coin into the water with a gentle splash that sends ripples across the surface like liquid music. Peter watches the ripples spread outward, each circle growing wider until they touch the fountain's edges and disappear. He wonders what she wished for, but something tells him that asking would break the magic of the moment. Instead, he reaches into his own pocket, finds a quarter, and makes his own wish before sending it to join hers beneath the water. Their coins sink together, side by side, and somehow this feels like a promise of something wonderful yet to come. The library looms ahead of them, its Gothic architecture reaching toward the darkening sky, like a cathedral dedicated to knowledge and dreams. Warm light spills from its tall windows, creating rectangles of gold against the stone facade. Students move in and out of the building like characters in a gentle ballet, their arms full of books and their minds full of possibilities. The sight fills both Peter and Mary Jane with the comfortable familiarity of belonging somewhere meaningful. Inside, the library wraps around them like a hushed embrace. The scent of old books mingles with the faint aroma of coffee from the small cafe tucked into the corner. Soft lighting illuminates rows upon rows of volumes, each shelf holding countless stories and infinite wisdom. The sound of pages turning creates a gentle whisper that feels almost like breathing, as if the building itself is alive and content. Mary Jane leads him to the returns desk, where she slides 3 books across the polished wood surface. Peter notices the titles as she hands them over: a collection of Shakespeare's sonnets, a biography of Georgia O'Keeffe, and a cookbook focused on comfort foods from around the world. Each choice tells him something more about who she is, adding new colors to the portrait he's been painting of her in his mind throughout their afternoon together. They wander through the stacks afterward, not because either of them needs anything specific, but because leaving feels too abrupt, too final for a day that has felt like a beautiful beginning. Between the shelves of poetry, Mary Jane pulls out a slim volume and reads him a few lines in a voice soft enough not to disturb other students, but clear enough to make each word feel precious. The verses speak of love that grows slowly, like flowers blooming in careful gardens, and Peter thinks he understands why she chose those particular lines to share. In the biography section, Peter shows her a photography book filled with images of everyday moments transformed into art. They flip through the pages together, their heads bent close as they examine pictures of children playing in puddles, elderly couples sharing park benches, rain-soaked city streets that look like impressionist paintings. Mary Jane comments on how the photographer managed to capture not just images, but feelings, and Peter nods, understanding that this is exactly what he hopes to achieve with his own work. Time continues its gentle flow around them as they explore different sections of the library. They discover they both love mystery novels, but prefer the cozy kind, where the detective solves crimes in small English villages over tea and scones. They both find poetry intimidating, but beautiful, like trying to catch butterflies with words. They both believe that libraries are among the most magical places on earth, repositories of human imagination and wisdom that somehow manage to feel both vast and intimate at the same time. As they make their way toward the exit, Mary Jane mentions that she's hungry and wonders if he might like to grab dinner together. The invitation comes naturally, without any of the awkwardness that often accompanies such suggestions between new acquaintances. Peter agrees immediately, his stomach reminding him that they've been talking and walking for hours without thinking about practical things like food. The prospect of extending their time together fills him with quiet joy. They choose a small Italian restaurant just off campus, the kind of place where checkered tablecloths and wine bottle candles create an atmosphere of comfortable romance. The hostess seats them at a table by the window, where they can watch the evening settle over the city. Like a soft blanket, street lights begin to twinkle on, creating pools of warm light along the sidewalks, where couples walk hand in hand and friends laugh over shared secrets. The menu becomes an excuse for more conversation. Mary Jane confesses that she's never been able to master cooking pasta without it turning into a sticky mess, which leads to Peter sharing his own kitchen disasters, including the time he tried to make pancakes and somehow set off every smoke alarm in his apartment building. Their laughter draws smiles from other diners, the kind of infectious joy that makes everyone around them feel a little happier just by witnessing it. They order simple dishes, nothing fancy or complicated, because the food is really just background music for the symphony of their conversation. Peter watches Mary Jane twirl spaghetti around her fork with practiced grace, notices how she closes her eyes for just a moment when she tastes something particularly delicious, observes the way she gestures with her hands when she tells stories, painting pictures in the air that only he can see. The restaurant fills with the dinner crowd, but their table feels like an island of intimacy in the sea of conversations and clinking silverware. They talk about everything and nothing, sharing childhood memories and future dreams with the easy comfort of people who have known each other for years rather than hours. Mary Jane tells him about the time she got the lead in her high school play and was so nervous she forgot all her lines during the first rehearsal. But the director was kind enough to work with her until she found her confidence. Peter shares his earliest memory of taking photographs, how his uncle gave him an old camera when he was 10 and taught him that the best pictures weren't always the ones where everyone was smiling and posing, but the ones that captured real moments of genuine emotion. He describes the first photograph he ever took that he was truly proud of, a picture of his aunt laughing at something silly while she was cooking dinner, flour dusting her apron, and pure joy lighting up her face. As the evening deepens around them, their conversation takes on the quality of a gentle meditation. They speak more softly now, leaning slightly across the table to hear each other better, creating a bubble of intimacy that makes the rest of the world fade into soft background noise. The candle between them flickers with each breath they take, casting dancing shadows on their faces and making everything feel touched with magic. Mary Jane mentions that she's always loved this time of evening, when day transitions into night and the world seems full of possibilities. She talks about how the approaching darkness doesn't feel like an ending, but rather like a curtain rising on a different kind of beauty. Peter finds himself agreeing, thinking that he's never noticed how lovely this transition time can be until he experienced it in her company. They linger over dessert, sharing a slice of tiramisu that tastes like clouds made of coffee and cream. The sweetness seems to make their conversation even more intimate somehow, as if sugar has the power to dissolve the last barriers between strangers and transform them into something more. Each spoonful becomes an excuse to stay a little longer, to stretch this perfect evening just a few more precious minutes. When they finally step back onto the sidewalk, the night air greets them with a coolness that makes Mary Jane pull her coat closer around her shoulders. Peter notices the gesture and wishes he had thought to offer his jacket, but she seems comfortable enough, just more aware of the autumn chill that serves as a gentle reminder that seasons change, and moments like this are finite, and therefore precious beyond measure. They walk slowly through the quiet campus streets, neither wanting to suggest that the evening should end. The sidewalks are painted with pools of golden light from the street lamps, and their footsteps create a gentle rhythm that harmonizes with the distant sounds of the city settling into its nighttime routine. Students pass by in small groups, their voices carrying fragments of conversations about weekend plans and upcoming exams. But Peter and Mary Jane exist in their own peaceful bubble, where time moves like honey through warm summer air. The conversation has evolved into something softer now, more reflective. Mary Jane speaks about her grandmother, who taught her to see magic in everyday things, how she learned to find stories in the patterns that frost makes on windows, and hear music in the way rain taps against rooftops. Peter shares memories of quiet Sunday mornings with his aunt and uncle, how they taught him that the best treasures in life aren't things you can buy, but moments you carry in your heart forever. They discover a small park tucked between two academic buildings, a hidden gem where flowering trees create a canopy overhead and wooden benches invite visitors to sit and contemplate. The space feels like a secret garden, peaceful and removed from the busier parts of campus. A fountain bubbles gently in the center, its soft music joining the whisper of leaves rustling in the evening breeze. Mary Jane suggests they sit for a while, and Peter agrees, both of them drawn to the serenity of this unexpected oasis. On the bench, they sit close enough to share warmth, but far enough apart to maintain the sweet tension of new friendship blossoming into something more. Mary Jane pulls her knees up and wraps her arms around them, a gesture that makes her look younger somehow, more vulnerable. She gazes up at the stars, beginning to peek through the darkening sky, and mentions how she used to make up stories about the constellations when she was little, creating adventures for the star patterns that had nothing to do with ancient mythology. Peter finds himself studying her profile in the soft light, memorizing the curve of her cheek and the way her eyelashes cast tiny shadows. He thinks about how some people enter your life like gentle rain, so quietly that you don't notice at first, but gradually you realize they've changed everything. The thought surprises him with its intensity, this feeling that something fundamental has shifted in his world. Simply because she chose to share his table in a coffee shop, she turns to find him watching her and smiles with such warmth that he feels his heart perform a little dance in his chest. They talk about dreams again, but softer dreams this time. Not the grand ambitions they discussed earlier, but the quiet hopes that live in the spaces between bigger plans. Mary Jane mentions wanting to plant a garden someday, to grow tomatoes and sunflowers and herbs that smell like summer. Peter talks about hoping to photograph a sunrise from every continent, to capture the way morning light looks different in different corners of the world. The park grows quieter as the evening deepens, but neither of them feels ready to break the spell of this perfect day. They sit in comfortable silence for stretches, watching the fountain's water catch the light and listening to the gentle sounds of night settling around them. Sometimes Mary Jane hums softly, melodies that seem to float on the air like musical butterflies. Sometimes Peter points out interesting shadows or the way the light falls across the path, sharing his photographer's eye for beauty in unexpected places. A couple walks by with their dog, an elderly golden retriever who stops to investigate the interesting smells near their bench. Mary Jane immediately extends her hand for the dog to sniff, speaking to him in the gentle voice people reserve for children and animals. The dog's tail wags with approval, and soon she's scratching behind his ears while the owners chat about what a friendly animal he is. Peter watches this interaction with growing admiration, noting how naturally kindness flows from her, how she makes every creature feel welcomed and valued. When the couple and their dog continue their evening walk, Mary Jane settles back against the bench with a contented sigh. She mentions how much she loves animals, how she volunteers at the shelter, not just because they need help, but because spending time with cats and dogs reminds her that love doesn't require words to be real and powerful. The animals teach her about living in the moment, about finding joy in simple things like warm sunshine and gentle touches. Peter shares his own love of nature, describing how he likes to photograph birds because they move through the world with such grace and purpose. He talks about a cardinal he's been trying to capture on film for weeks, how it visits the tree outside his apartment window every morning, but always flies away before he can get the perfect shot. Mary Jane suggests that maybe the cardinal is teaching him patience, that the best photographs might be worth waiting for. As the night air grows cooler, Mary Jane shivers slightly, and Peter immediately shrugs out of his light jacket to offer it to her. She accepts with a grateful smile that makes his heart warm despite the chill. The jacket looks oversized on her smaller frame, but she pulls it close around her shoulders like a comforting embrace. Peter thinks she looks beautiful wrapped in something of his, as if they're already learning to take care of each other in small, meaningful ways. They continue talking in quieter voices now, their words mixing with the gentle sounds of water and wind. Mary Jane tells him about her favorite childhood book, a story about a little mouse who befriended a lion, and how it taught her that size doesn't matter when it comes to courage or kindness. Peter describes a photograph he saw once of an elderly man feeding pigeons in a park, how something about the man's gentle expression stayed with him for months and inspired him to look for similar moments of quiet compassion in his own work. The conversation drifts to favorite seasons, and they discover they both love autumn best, though for different reasons. Mary Jane loves the way trees transform themselves into living artwork, how they teach us that change can be beautiful rather than frightening. Peter enjoys the quality of light in fall, how it seems softer and more golden, perfect for photography, but also for seeing the world through kinder eyes. They talk about favorite foods and discover they both believe chocolate chip cookies can solve most problems, at least temporarily. Mary Jane confesses that she stress bakes during exam season and usually ends up with far more cookies than one person should reasonably consume. Peter mentions that his aunt makes the world's best apple pie, and he's been trying for years to convince her to share the secret recipe. The conversation about food leads naturally to memories of family gatherings and holiday traditions. Mary Jane describes Christmas mornings at her grandmother's house, where everyone gathered around a tree that seemed to touch the ceiling, and the kitchen always smelled like cinnamon and vanilla. She talks about how her grandmother taught her that the best gifts aren't wrapped in paper, but found in moments of connection, in laughter shared around a dinner table, and stories passed down through generations. Peter shares memories of summer evenings on his uncle's front porch, where they would sit in rocking chairs and watch fireflies dance in the gathering darkness. His uncle taught him to appreciate silence, to find peace in moments when words weren't necessary, when just being present with someone you care about was enough. These memories feel precious when shared with Mary Jane, as if speaking them aloud in her presence makes them more real somehow. A gentle breeze stirs the leaves overhead, creating a soft rustling sound, like whispered secrets. Mary Jane tilts her head back to look up at the branches, and in the dim light filtering through the canopy, she looks like something from a beautiful dream. Peter feels a surge of gratitude for this unexpected day, for the series of small coincidences that led them to share the same table, the same walk, the same bench under the stars. She mentions that she's always believed in serendipity, in the idea that some meetings are written in invisible ink across the universe, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. The thought makes Peter smile, because he's starting to think that perhaps their afternoon began long before they actually met, in some realm where souls recognize each other before bodies do. As the evening grows later, they both become more aware that this magical day will eventually need to draw to a close. But neither wants to be the first to suggest ending it. So they continue to sit in their peaceful haven, drawing out each moment like a favorite song you never want to finish. The night wraps around them like a gentle blanket, warm and comforting despite the autumn chill. Mary Jane mentions that she has an early class tomorrow, but says it almost reluctantly, as if she's apologizing to the universe for having responsibilities that might interrupt this perfect evening. Peter nods, understanding, mentioning his own morning commitments, but neither of them makes any move to leave their bench. They seem to have reached an unspoken agreement that this moment belongs to them, that the rest of the world can wait just a little while longer. The fountain continues its gentle music, and somewhere in the distance, a church bell chimes the hour with soft, melodious notes that seem to bless their time together rather than hurry it along. Mary Jane pulls Peter's jacket closer around her shoulders and smiles at him with such tenderness that he feels something shift permanently in his chest, as if his heart has learned a new rhythm designed specifically for moments like this. They sit in the gentle embrace of evening silence, neither wanting to disturb the delicate magic that has settled around them like stardust. The fountain's soft melody creates a lullaby that seems designed for moments exactly like this, when two people discover that time can bend and stretch around shared contentment. Mary Jane adjusts Peter's jacket around her shoulders, and the simple gesture feels like trust made visible, like an unspoken promise that some things in life are worth treasuring. Peter finds himself thinking about how this day began with such ordinary expectations. He had planned to study photography techniques, maybe grab a quick coffee, perhaps catch up on reading assignments. Instead, he discovered that the most beautiful photographs aren't always captured by cameras, but sometimes live only in memory, painted with colors that no film could ever reproduce. The image of Mary Jane laughing over their shared dessert, her eyes bright with joy, has already become one of those precious mental photographs he knows he'll carry forever. Mary Jane speaks softly about how she believes that certain evenings are gifts from the universe, nights when everything aligns perfectly to create something beautiful and unrepeatable. She mentions how her grandmother used to tell her that angels paint the sky different colors each evening, never creating the same masterpiece twice. Tonight's sky seems particularly blessed, with stars beginning to peek through like scattered diamonds on deep blue velvet. The park around them feels enchanted, as if they've stumbled into a fairy tale that's being written just for them. Other students occasionally pass by on the distant paths, but their voices fade into pleasant background music that only serves to emphasize the intimacy of this hidden corner of campus. Peter thinks about how some places become sacred simply because of what happens there, how this particular bench will forever hold the memory of their first real conversation. Mary Jane tells him about a game she used to play as a child, lying on her back in the grass and finding shapes in the clouds, dragons and castles, sailing ships and butterflies, entire worlds floating across the sky, just waiting for someone with enough imagination to discover them. She suggests they try the same thing with stars, and though the night sky offers fewer obvious pictures, they spend several minutes creating constellations of their own invention. Peter points to a cluster of stars and declares them a camera, perfect for capturing celestial moments. Mary Jane laughs and identifies another group as a stage where star actors perform nightly shows for anyone wise enough to look up. Their invented constellations become characters in an impromptu story, a tale of cosmic adventures that makes them both giggle like children, discovering a secret language known only to them. The conversation drifts to favorite childhood games and innocent adventures. Mary Jane describes elaborate games of pretend she used to play with her younger sister, creating entire kingdoms in their backyard, where they ruled as benevolent queens of an empire populated by stuffed animals and garden fairies. Peter shares memories of building blanket forts with his cousin, constructing elaborate hideouts where they could read comic books by flashlight and plan imaginary expeditions to distant lands. These shared memories create another layer of connection between them, as if they're discovering that their childhoods, though lived separately, were painted with similar colors of wonder and imagination. They both maintained that precious ability to find magic in ordinary moments, to see possibilities where others might see only routine. This shared perspective feels like finding a kindred spirit in a world that sometimes forgets the importance of wonder. Mary Jane mentions her love of rainy Saturday afternoons, when the world outside grows quiet and cozy, perfect for reading or writing letters, or simply listening to the gentle percussion of drops against windows. She describes how she likes to make hot chocolate on such days, adding extra marshmallows and settling by her apartment window to watch the rain transform the familiar neighborhood into something soft and dreamlike. Peter shares his appreciation for early morning walks, those precious hours when the city is still waking up and everything feels fresh and full of potential. He talks about how the light is different in the morning, softer and more forgiving, how it makes even busy streets look peaceful and beautiful. He mentions a particular route he likes to take through the park near his apartment, where he often encounters the same joggers and dog walkers who have become part of his daily rhythm. They discover they both love libraries for the same reasons, not just for the books, but for the atmosphere of quiet learning and shared knowledge. Mary Jane describes her favorite spot in the main branch downtown, a window seat on the third floor, where she can read while watching people hurry past. On the sidewalk below, Peter mentions how he enjoys the photography section of the university library, where he can spend hours studying the work of masters and dreaming about his own future projects. The topic of dreams leads them into deeper territory, sharing aspirations that feel too precious to voice to just anyone. Mary Jane talks about wanting to write a children's book someday, something that would help young readers believe in their own capacity for kindness and courage. She envisions illustrations that would capture the magic she sees in everyday moments, pictures that would remind children that wonder exists everywhere if they know how to look for it. Peter confesses his dream of creating a photography exhibition focused on ordinary heroes, people who make the world better in quiet, unnoticed ways. He wants to capture teachers staying late to help struggling students, neighbors checking on elderly residents, children sharing toys with friends who have less. His vision is to show that heroism doesn't always wear a cape, that sometimes it simply wears a kind smile and an open heart. Their shared idealism creates another bridge between them, this mutual desire to contribute something beautiful to the world. They both understand that success isn't just about personal achievement, but about finding ways to make life a little brighter for others. This common philosophy feels significant, like discovering they speak the same emotional language, even though they've only just met. As the evening air grows cooler, Mary Jane shivers slightly, despite Peter's jacket, and he suggests they might want to start walking back toward the dormitories. She agrees, reluctantly, clearly as hesitant as he is to end this perfect interlude. They rise from the bench slowly, taking one last look around their temporary sanctuary before beginning the gentle journey back toward the more populated parts of campus. Their walk becomes a meditation on the day they've shared, punctuated by comfortable silences and soft observations about the beauty of the night around them. The campus paths wind through gardens where autumn flowers still bloom despite the cooling weather, their colors muted but still lovely in the lamplight. Mary Jane stops to admire a late-blooming rose, its petals the color of sunset, and Peter finds himself admiring her appreciation for small beauties more than the flower itself. They pass other students heading back to dormitories or walking to late study sessions in the library. Some call out friendly greetings, and both Peter and Mary Jane respond warmly, but their attention remains focused on each other and the precious bubble of connection they've created throughout this magical day. The approaching end of their time together makes every remaining moment feel more valuable, like the last few pages of a beloved book you never want to finish. Near the entrance to Mary Jane's residence hall, they slow their pace even further, neither quite ready to say goodbye. The building rises before them like a gentle giant, its windows glowing with warm light where other students are settling into their evening routines. Mary Jane mentions that her room is on the 3rd floor, with a view of the courtyard where cherry trees bloom every spring, painting the world in soft pink petals that dance on spring breezes. Peter shares that his apartment is only a few blocks away, close enough that he often walks past this very building on his way to classes. The knowledge that they exist in the same small corner of the world feels comforting, like a promise that this won't be their only meeting. They exchange phone numbers with the careful tenderness of people handling something precious, each saving the other's contact information like treasure. Mary Jane returns Peter's jacket with obvious reluctance, and he accepts it, while wishing he had an excuse to let her keep it longer. The brief moment when their hands touch during the exchange feels electric, charged with possibility and sweet anticipation. She thanks him for the most wonderful day, her voice soft with sincerity that makes his heart perform another of those delightful little dances. Peter tells her that meeting her has been the highlight of not just his day, but his entire semester, maybe his entire year. The admission surprises him with its honesty, but Mary Jane's radiant smile tells him that sometimes honesty is exactly the right choice. They stand facing each other in the soft glow of the residence hall's entrance lights, neither wanting to be the first to turn away from this moment. She mentions that she usually studies at the coffee shop on 5th Street most afternoons, just in case he ever happens to be in the neighborhood. Peter assures her that he has a sudden interest in spending more time in that particular coffee shop, that he might need to expand his study habits to include more afternoon sessions there. Their laughter mingles with the night air, creating music that seems to bless their tentative plans. Mary Jane steps toward the building's entrance, but turns back one more time, as if she wants to memorize this moment, to carry the image of Peter standing under the lamplight with his gentle smile and kind eyes. She waves goodbye with fingers that seem reluctant to move, and Peter waves back, watching until she disappears through the glass doors into the warm interior of her dormitory. He stands alone on the sidewalk for a moment, feeling the night air on his face and replaying the events of this extraordinary day. The campus around him looks exactly the same as it did this morning, but everything feels transformed, as if he's seeing familiar places through new eyes that have learned to recognize magic in everyday moments. The walk back to his apartment becomes a victory lap, a celebration of unexpected joy and the promise of tomorrow. Back in his apartment, Peter moves through his evening routine with a lightness he hasn't felt in months. Everything seems touched by the magic of his day with Mary Jane. The simple act of brushing his teeth becomes a moment to smile at his reflection, remembering how she laughed when he told that story about the pancake disaster. His camera sits on the desk where he left it this morning, but now it feels like a bridge to future possibilities rather than just a tool for capturing assignments. He lies in bed, thinking about the way Mary Jane's eyes lit up when she talked about her dreams, how her voice carried such genuine warmth when she spoke about helping others. The memory of her hand briefly touching his when she returned his jacket replays in his mind like a favorite song. Sleep comes easily, filled with dreams of coffee shops and park benches and the sound of laughter that feels like home. Meanwhile, Mary Jane climbs the stairs to her third-floor room with Peter's jacket still carrying the faint scent of his cologne. Her roommate is already asleep, so she moves quietly through her bedtime preparations. But inside, her heart is singing. She thinks about how natural their conversation felt, how Peter listened to her stories with such genuine interest, as if every word she spoke was important and worth remembering. She writes in her journal before sleeping, something she does every night, but tonight feels especially meaningful. The pages fill with reflections on unexpected meetings and the way some people enter your life like gentle sunshine, warming everything they touch. She writes about believing in serendipity, about how the universe sometimes conspires to bring the right people together at exactly the right moment when both hearts are ready to recognize something beautiful. And so our gentle story draws to a close like the final notes of a lullaby, drifting into peaceful silence. Peter and Mary Jane have found each other in that magical way that happens when hearts are ready to recognize something beautiful. Their love story reminds us that the most precious connections often begin with the simplest moments: a shared table, a kind smile, a willingness to see wonder in ordinary things. As you drift into dreams tonight, carry with you the warmth of their beginning, the promise that love grows best in quiet gardens, tended by patient hearts. Sweet dreams.